goodness, you're right. Exact same thing as me.
Well, I said we're going to be a team.
Okay, Mom. Whatever.
Every teen boy loves to look like his mom, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, in all seriousness, let's crack down to this and talk about kings of Judah and kings of Israel. There's a whole lot. So in talking about the other kings of Israel, Solomon's son, who caused a terrible disruption in the kingdom, causing the kingdom to split because he despised the wisdom of the elders and went with the young people who said, have no mercy on the people and tax them worse than your father. Didn't go well. So we have the split of the kingdoms. I'll be going over the kings of Judah. Paul will be going over the kings of Israel. So after Rehoboam
came the first in a very long line of wicked kings of the northern kingdom of Israel, Jeroboam. Now, a little backstory. Jeroboam was one of the overseers of Solomon's building projects during the reign of Solomon. And he would get all the complaints of the people about taxation, misrepresentation in government. A lot of the northern tribes were upset that the bottom tribes had most of the importance, leaving the northern tribes with little significance, and they felt unrepresented. Jeroboam took these complaints and upon himself, and he said that he would fix the problems. This caused a lot of problems with Solomon, so Jeroboam fled to Egypt. He stayed in Egypt for a while until things were safe after Solomon died, and the people started to complain about Rehoboam. Jeroboam took this opportunity to politic, coming in to save the north of Israel and causing the split of the kingdoms, making Jeroboam the first king of the northern kingdom of Israel. He's known for reinstituting the Canaanite practice of golden calf worship, as well as unordained worship sites for God in order to keep the people from traveling to the south and worshiping at a Judean temple.
he knew that if the people came down to Jerusalem to worship, their loyalty could be divided. Exactly. And thus, here came the golden calves into Israel again. But in Judah, Abijah comes along. His name is, my father is Yah. That's what it's supposed to be. And he tried to defeat Jeroboam to no avail.
Nadav was the successor to Jeroboam after his death, and he was slain by his captain, Baasha.
His own captain. But we have a good king, Asa. Keep in mind, these dates are approximate. Some of them overlap a little bit because there was some co-regency going on, fathers and sons ruling at the same time. And these, once again, are not agreed by all scholars by a year or two here and there. So, ballpark, okay? He purged idolatry from the country. His wife's name was Azubah, which means desolation or forsaken. Kind of sad, actually. However, Ethiopian chief, backed by Egypt, went against him. And with the odds of, there's more than 2 to 1, God was behind Asa and he was triumphant. He still could not get both North and South united. Sadly, he had a foot disease and he chose to go to worldly doctors rather than God.
Baasa, as previously mentioned, King Asa bribed the Syrians into finally killing Baasa. But during Baasa's life, he led a very wicked life. He killed the entire family of Nadav, the previous king Nadav, as well as the previous king Nadav himself. The prophet Jehu also foretold that his dynasty would end with his son.
And it did. So keep in mind, now I said Asa was a good king. I've got like a little happy face right there to remind me he did good things. But everything's relative. Bribed people to kill, someone else. Everything's relative, right? We have Jehoshaphat next. He was also a good king. He decided the word of the Lord needed to be more than just in mandates of government. And so he sent out the Levites to teach people the Bible so they could have scripture in their heart. He sought to have alliances with the north to bring the country together. Didn't work.
Next up, in Israel, we have a very difficult time of a power struggle between several people who lasted very short reigns, that being Elah, Zimri, Omri, and Tibni. Elah was Omri's army commander. He was very talented. Zimri was a chariot driver who was killed by Elah while drunk. Zimri was king for 7 days. The army chose Omri. Zimri burned the palace and committed suicide. Omri was more evil than all previous kings, but he's considered one of the early constructors of Sumerian society.
Talk about drama, okay? You don't need Netflix, people. You got more of it here than we can handle. Jehoram came next. Now, we had some good kings in Judah, and now we've got a bad one. He killed 6 brothers because he didn't want any competition to the throne, and he was very insecure. So he married evil Queen Athaliah from this family.
He married Jezebel and killed Naboth. He reinstituted Baal worship with idols, and he was foretold by Elijah to be a troubler of Israel. And Malachi said he would die in battle. It is documented that the dogs licked up his blood, a very dishonorable death.
Horrible and true. What do you think of that story? What do you think of that story? That's horrible. I don't blame you. Now, who is this horrible Queen Athaliah, who was either the daughter or the sister to Ahab? They still argue over that, but she was of Ahab's house. Ahab, Jezebel, all that wickedness overflowed to this woman, Athaliah.
Next up in Israel, we have King Jehoram, who is the son of Jezebel and Ahab, our previous king. He did not worship Baal, but he still sinned against God. Elisha the prophet talks about him, and he died with Jehoram of Judah by the Arameans with Jehoshaphat. So, wasn't a good king, but wasn't the worst either.
I don't hear any good kings coming out of your pile.
Oh, no.
Just saying.
No,
You got the bad pile here.
It just gets
Now,
worse.
I know, and even though I'm saying, okay, so-and-so was a good king, I have, Joash has a little happy face. Joash wasn't a good king the whole time. I mean, Zechariah rebuked him, and he ended up being assassinated by servants and stoned. And I mean, he fell away too and did things, but everything's relative. So if they just do a little bit of goodness, I'm putting a happy face because it's hard to find good kings in this pile. She was horrible. Now, remember how Jehoram married her all to get power over Israel. Athaliah actually inherited the throne after Jehoram died. And so she killed anyone who had a claim to the throne because she was not going to share the throne with anybody. Very wicked queen of Judah. Don't hear about her much. Like I said, she tried to kill everybody. She missed young King Joash or Jehoash. Her sister, Yehosheba, saved little baby Joash as a baby. And she didn't know. But God had a plan.
Things were very exciting in Judah. Meanwhile, in Israel, things were still going downhill. We have King Ahaziah, who was a failed attempt at being a king over the unified Israel and
Both kingdoms.
Judea. He was noted as sinning in the way of his mother, or being as his mother was like, that being Jezebel. He was very wicked. He tried to create a treaty with Judah to create ships to build up a sea navy. But because he lacked God's blessing, all the ships were wrecked before they were even set sailing. That treaty was tried to be made with Jehoshaphat, but for obvious reasons stated, the treaty did not follow through. Now the Moabites do record him as being Ahab's son, so there is some record outside of the Bible of his legacy.
Now remember how I just mentioned evil Queen Athaliah, who tried to kill everyone, but little baby Joash got away because of her own sister saving him. Well, little Jehoash or Joash became 7 years old in hiding, and they realized, you know what? He's old enough to take the throne now. which did not go over well with Athaliah, who tried to have him killed, called treason, and so they killed her. He was raised by a priest, therefore he had the law of God in him, instilled in him. He was a good king. He brought back true worship to God. And even though he was the sole survivor of his grandma's massacre, he brought the nation back to God.
God is a king.
He did not. Okay. If you follow. Actually, the stories are getting so involved, we're going to have to take a break just to cool off a bit. Our whole set's falling apart. So go to the next section, part 2, for more of the kings.